Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Bufnagle the podcast, where we explore entertaining and enlightening discussions of the adventure of life and all things good. From science and technology to history and philosophy to leadership and success. We hope to give you a better understanding of the world and skills for everyone to pursue their own adventure.
Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Bufnagle the podcast, where we talk about all things good and the pursuit of the adventure of life. I'm Rafe, and it's a great day when we get to do a podcast together. Harry, how are you today?
I'm doing well. I'm eager for part 3 of Earnest Shackleton here, and hopefully the listeners are still here, and we're not going from 10 to 9 to 8, kind of like the dogs end up doing here on the journey.
Yeah, the dog is kind of this could be a sad day for the dogs, depending on how far we get. And I hope it's okay. Let me rephrase that. I know it's okay, but I'm going to say I hope it's okay that we're not exactly sure how far we're going to get in each one, because the discussion kind of meanders as we go through. So we want here to give you the full story and the full feeling of the shack going across the Weddell Sea there. But for you guys out there, thank you very much for listening. We appreciate having you here. Without you, we are not the global top 10% podcast that we are. So we appreciate everything you do for us. Remember, share the love, share the buff with your friends. Tell them to listen, and you will get a free episode. If you are new to the buff, thank you for coming. We appreciate having you here with us this week to learn about Shack, and in the future to learn about all sorts of things about the adventure of life. And remember, if you can, hit the subscribe button. That really helps. Write us some good reviews. That's a great thing. Give us 5 stars. If you want to say something bad, that's fine. Go in a dark room all by yourself, close the door, and say something bad, and then come out, and then everything will be fine. Other than that, Harry, when we last left it's kind of when Zach and I did Lewis and Clark, they called themselves the Corps of Discovery, and Magellan called him the Armada de la Muca, or whatever, right? But this is just Shackleton and his men. I wish it was like the Happy 28 or whatever they are.
Oh no, they're actually right now they're rather miserable, right? They're not even on the boat anymore. They are starting to pitch camp next to the Endurance because it's out of commission.
It's uninhabitable.
Inhabitable? Uninhabitable?
It's habitable. It's not habitable. It's inhabitable. It's dishabitable. So they can't stay on the Endurance anymore. The Endurance can no longer endure, and it has been crushed by the ice. So they spent their time at the end of the last episode pumping water out to try to keep it going, and the ice just shredded that poor boat. And they got a lot of sleep that night. It was well needed. They slept on the ice. It was very cold. There was, it's really cold there, and there was a lot of cuddling. I mean, that's just how. I don't know how else to put it.
That's true.
That they were
body heat's a wonderful thing,
and they got to know how should I say it? They got to know their fellow adventurers, but just the story does this every time you turn around. The ship is getting destroyed. They finally get the stuff off the ship that they need. They set up camp about 200 yards from the ship, and they're sleeping there. And then at 1 o'clock in the morning, the floe splits right through the camp. So they have to move all the stuff. They got to get up. It's 1 o'clock in the morning. They got to get up. They got to move their stuff to the bigger side. In the morning, it's a beautiful day when they get up. It's 6 degrees. They sort through their equipment and they secure things to the sledge and to the sleds that they have. And then they make a plan. Okay. And this is on page 78. They make a plan because they no longer have a boat. All right. The plan, as they all knew, was to march toward Paulet Island, 346 miles to the northwest, where the stores left in 1902 should still be. The distance was farther than from New York City to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and they would be dragging 2 of their 3 boats with them, since it was assumed that they would eventually run into open water.
Sure, that's just like a quick jaunt across the Northeast, right?
346 miles across the ice. And once again, people are saying, well, why can't they just get out there and just walk, drag the stuff behind you? It's ice. It's you, 60 dogs or so, provisions, 2 of the boats. There were 3 lifeboats with them. They were going to bring 2. So Paulet Island is at like the tip of the Palmer Peninsula. There's a lot of peas there. As my friend used to say, that's a pretty pathetic proliferation of peas. Pollet Island at the tip of the Palmer Peninsula. So that's kind of where they're going, and the ice is rotating. They're starting to swing mostly north and a little bit northwest along their patch. Their flow is starting to drift that way. I think at this point everybody has realized we're not getting to the South Pole. We are shooting to get back to civilization.
Well, yeah, you're just shooting to stay alive at this point, right? Like, your boat's gone. Fantastic. You made it out with some provisions, and now you're just trying to realize, well, how long are my provisions going to last? And can I make it to the next spot of hospitable land? However hospitable that's going to be, right? In the Antarctic.
The land's got to be really valuable it's not moving. It doesn't slide around. You can't fall through it probably. Although the land down there, as we're going to find out, is not it's not prime Midwestern farmland. That's for sure.
Hey, Rafe, you know what I absolutely love?
Tell me what you absolutely love.
I love myself some fruit smoothies, especially after a workout.
Fruit smoothies?
Oh, yeah. And you know what I use? I use my BlendJet 2.
No way. I was just going to say that the BlendJet 2 is a portable blender. All right. So you can use your blender to make a smoothie at work or a protein shake at the gym or even a margarita on the beach. It's small enough to fit in a cup holder, but powerful enough to blast through tough ingredients like ice and frozen fruit with ease. BlendJet 2 is whisper quiet, so you can make your morning smoothie without waking up the whole house. And it lasts for 15 plus blends and recharges itself quickly with a USB-C. And best of all, BlendJet 2 cleans itself. Just blend some water with a drop of soap and you are good to go. And Harry, you go to their little website. You can check, like, they have all of these colors and patterns on there. They're like, you know who really could use a BlendJet 2 would be Earnest Shackleton. That's
right. I'll bet he would. So what are you waiting for? What is Earnest Shackleton waiting for? Go to blendjet.com, use the description in the link below, and grab yours today. Be sure to use the promo code Bufnagle to get 12% off your order and free 2-day shipping. No other portable blender on the market comes close to the quality, power, and innovation of the BlendJet 2. They guarantee you'll love it or your money back. Blend anytime, anywhere with the BlendJet 2 portable blender. Go to blendjet.com and use the code Bufnagle to get 12% off your order and free 2-day shipping. Shop today, and you're going to get the best deal ever.
So they mount the boats onto the sledges. These things, these are big boats, Harry. These are 20-foot long boats. Harry. These are not. It's not like a canoe, okay? And the men responded very well that they were going to, it's time to try to get home. So the plan was we're going to make a run for it. All right, we're going to go very lightweight. Everybody's going to take only essentials, and we're going to go very quickly to hopefully to the edge of the ice, wherever that is. Then we're going to get in the boats and we're going to row toward this Pollet Island. We're going to find provisions there. Then we'll do the next thing once we get there. But that will get us off this ice. So they were only going to bring what they could. Shackleton called hands together at the center of the circle of tents. His face was grave. He explained it was imperative that all weight be reduced to the barest minimum. Each man, he said, would be allowed the clothes on his back, plus 2 pairs of mittens, 6 pairs of socks, 2 pairs of boots, a sleeping bag, a pound of tobacco, and 2 pounds of personal gear. Speaking with the utmost conviction, Shackleton pointed out that no article was of any value when weighed against their ultimate survival, and he exhorted them to be ruthless in riddling themselves of every unnecessary ounce, regardless of its value. After he had spoken, he reached under his parka and took out a gold cigarette case and several gold sovereigns and threw them into the snow at his feet. Then he opened the Bible Queen Alexandra had given them and ripped out the flyleaf page and the page containing the 23rd Psalm. And he also tore out a page from the book of Job with the verse on it, out of whose womb came the ice and the hoary frost of heaven, who hath gendered it? The waters are hid as with a stone, and the face of the deep is frozen. Then he laid the Bible in the snow and walked away.
It's a tad dramatic, right?
And I think that was his point. He was like, dude, like, if you want to live, we're not taking anything that you don't absolutely need.
And Lansing goes on to describe in the next few paragraphs that it is absolutely imperative to have speed over anything else. And Shackleton thought that if I can get there faster, if I can get there in 20 days, I don't need clothes for 25 days, right? So I can shed weight. I can get there even faster. So I think he was thinking, like, if I get from point A to point B, I can figure out everything else at point B.
Yeah, and the idea was a lot of times these, and I know I do this. Okay, I do this when I pack for trips. I'm like, well, if this happens, I need this shirt, and if this happens, I need those shoes, and I need to have my sunglasses, and I need to have my headphones, and I need to have my all these other things, right? From studying the outcomes of past expeditions, Shackleton believed that those that burdened themselves with equipment to meet every contingency had fared much worse than those that had sacrificed total preparedness for speed. He wanted speed, and it's not going to do us any good to keep we don't need the ice axe. We're not climbing mountains. We're not going to do these, like, leave all that other stuff behind. And so they decided, this is what we're going to do. We're firing off. We're going to go to Paulet Island. We're going to get our little butts home, back to the warmth and comfort of jolly.
And I don't think he was putting all of his eggs in one basket, so to speak. Right? He still understood that you need a little bit of flexibility.
Right.
So it's not like he's not saying burn one of the boats because we don't want to carry it.
No, they just left it behind.
Yeah.
So he wants speed. Okay. And the other thing to note here is that he has studied these things. And I guess that's what you do, right? If you're going to go on an expedition, you're going to find out what has worked in the past and what hasn't. And that's only smart to do. But that's the point there, is that he has studied and he has prepared. The journey would begin the next day. It says, on the eve of setting out, Shackleton wrote, "I pray God I can manage to get the whole party safe to civilization." And that's an indication, like, he never had, his level of internal responsibility for these 28 lives, if you count himself, and the expedition, I mean, he carried all that weight the whole time. There was never any of this, well, they chose, it's up to them,
Well, and you read the rest of the book, none of it is ever outwardly displayed. Shackleton never tells anyone else, it's my responsibility to keep you alive. All of these things are noted in his own diary. And even at the very end, we'll soon find out, there's only one moment where there's fear on his face that he's not going to make it, and he's not going to be able to keep his responsibility to keep men alive.
And I guess that, that's, you can say what, I don't know what you call that. Okay. If that's
stoicism, maybe,
well, maybe a little stoicism, but it's also this manly grit that this is, what it is. It's duty. It's just duty, that he felt that. And all these guys felt that incredible sense of duty to you are put here to do a thing. You have to do the thing. There's no, I don't feel like it. There's an obstacle in the way. It's all about duty. And that's what he did. And I talked a little bit about duty last summer with when the Queen died, and her sense of duty, and with your grandmother, Harry, with my mother-in-law, and how she felt duty as well. And I just wonder if people have that same sense of duty now.
You mentioned duty and what Shackleton has, and you sent me a great quote the other week as we're trying to figure out, what we're going to talk about here for all of these episodes. And the quote you sent me was, "For a joint scientific and geographical piece of organization, give me Scott. For a winter journey, Wilson. For a dash to the pole and nothing else, Amundsen. And if I am the devil of a hole and I want to get out of it, give me Shackleton every time." It's when you're in a tough situation, you want a guy like Shackleton leading the crew.
And I think we've met guys like this. I mean, I know people that are like that. They're just unflappable. The sense that they're going to, I don't think his men ever thought they weren't going to make it.
Yeah.
They never thought they would. And we're going to find out there are a lot of opportunities for this thing to come off the rail. And the fact that we're talking about it now is indication. Yeah, that didn't come off the rails. But it's he was the man, and he carried it all on him. And I don't know if maybe he should have talked about his feelings more. Maybe, I don't know.
He probably go to his therapist when he was done.
I'm sure but he did. But there was a different way that they did that, and maybe that was harder. Maybe it was better. Maybe it was worse. I don't have any idea. But you can't lead 28 men in those kinds of conditions. Lead 27 men without that attitude. You can't do it. You can't do it. And that's it's the same. He was in our time. He would have been. Who did Apollo 13? Was that Lovell?
Yeah.
That's Lovell. It's James Lovell. So, all right. So they're going to go. Okay. And on October 30th, it is 15 degrees and the ice is now starting to get soft. Okay. So October 30th, it's, we're getting into spring now. It's not autumn.
Yep.
We're getting into spring down there and the ice is soft, which is wonderful if you're trying to pull a big sledge. So they, at 11:30 on the 30th, they had to put down 3 of the puppies and Sirius, one of the older puppies, and a cat that they had with them. And at 2 p.m. that afternoon, they started off. They looked for a flat place to go, but there were pressure ridges everywhere, and they started making progress. By 5 p.m. Harry, they had marched for 3 hours, pulling all their stuff. They were a mile from the ship.
Excellent.
So,
Great progress.
And I'm looking at, they have 340, and I went back at that point when I was reading. I was like, how far was it to Pullman Island? It's 346 miles from where they were when they started. And after 3 hours of marching, they are 1 mile closer. After 3 hours. And it wasn't like they were screwing around.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, they had guys pulling the sleds and they had guys pulling the boats and dogs pulling sleds and guys dragging the little hut that they need to cook in. I mean, it was even as light as they were, it was still nearly impossible. So they get some supper, they get some sleep. And the next day, the next day was much better. They made 3/4 of a mile. And this is what it was like trying to walk there in the slush. There was no sense going on. On page 83, Shackleton goes to look for a passageway. Like, how do we get through this ice? How do we get over these pressure? It was all about getting over these pressure ridges, these places where the floes come together and they have to climb over them with all this junk. Shackleton came to a decision. When he arrived, he called all the hands together. He told the men that they had made less than a mile a day and that the route ahead appeared to get progressively worse. Their advance, he said, hardly merited the effort that it required. And since they were not likely to find a better place to camp, they would stay where they were until the drift ice should carry them closer to land.
Looks like you're just going to sit it out.
We have to ride it out. We're going to have to ride this thing until something changes. And that gets, I can't imagine how difficult that was for those guys. They have to just stop now and camp. Right. And so what he does, he says, okay, so you guys with the dogs, empty the sleds and go back and get all the food and all the things that we decided we're not going to carry. Go back and get that, the clothing and all the other stuff, everything that you can carry, go back to the Endurance and get that. And Wild also goes back to the Endurance and gets the 3rd boat. They're going to have all 3 boats. And it's going to turn out that that's a very valuable decision. So after a week on the ice, after exiting the Endurance, they were pretty much, they were just stuck. They were castaways on the ice. They were castaways in one of the most savage regions of the world, drifting they knew not where, without a hope of rescue, subsisting only so long as Providence sent them food to eat.
Yeah, normally in the means of a seal or a penguin wandering within the vicinity.
Yeah, so they're waiting for that, and they have some provisions, but they didn't bring many of them. They went back and get some of it, but they have that. No, they were able to get on November 5th. Everybody goes back to the ship to grab stuff. They grab some books. They grab some photographic negatives, Harry. And if you go online these days, you can see the results of those negatives, and some of those were color negatives, and we have color photos from there. And some of them look just wonderful. But there's not much to see because it's mostly ice.
Sure, mostly ice.
But they were able to get some seals, and then they spend a couple times. They go back and forth to the ship to get their stuff and bring it the 1.75 miles, whatever it was. They go back to the ship. They cut through the deck of the ship and they pull out 3.5 tons of flour, rice, sugar, barley, lentils, veggies, and jam. Okay, 3.5 tons, 7,000 pounds of stuff out of the ship. And what kind of stuff? flour, rice, sugar, barley, lentils, veggies, and jam. That's the stuff they had on the ship. So they grabbed it and they brought it forward. We're going to bring that up. Okay. So there was going to be a new plan. And the new plan was going to be to stay on the ice at least until January. So it's early November. So it's like 60 days. They're going to stay on the ice. Right. And that's going to be the midpoint of the summer. And then hopefully they're going to be drifting at that point up toward the Palmer Peninsula. Right. Then they're going to hope to get to the water. Right. And then row to the land. Or when they get close, they're going to hike with speed. They're just going to like run for it. All right. And just drag one little boat and get to the edge of the water and then ferry people across from the ice floe to the land. Right. Whatever they're doing, they don't want to spend winter on the ice.
Well, they just went through it too, didn't they?
Right. So, well, it's summer now. It's getting, but they can't do anything now because the ice is too soft.
Yep.
And too yucky. Okay. And Shackleton's only fear, like he said, was of losing control. And the reason he was scared of that is because it sounds so bad to say he was scared of that. He felt responsibility. That's what he had. So he was very strategic in who he put in which tent, so that these guys kept the morale high, and that you didn't get a bunch of people together that would all like collaborate and complain about how terrible things were. In November, they get a storm that blows them 16 miles, Harry, in one day.
That's a good day.
That's a great day, okay? And on November 12th, they got north wind at 35 degrees, but it was just wet on the ice floe where they were. It was terrible there. There's a description of their plan here on page 97. Their drift appeared to be carrying them directly towards Snow Hill Island, 275 miles to the northwest. It lay off the coast of the Palmer Peninsula and was probably connected to the peninsula by ice. If the pack opened up enough to let them launch the boats in time, they might be able to land there. Then they would be in position to travel overland 150 miles to the west coast of the Palmer Peninsula, eventually arriving at Wilhelmina Bay, a frequent summertime stopping place for the whalers. Once contact had been established, their rescue would be assured. Shackleton planned to have a small party of 4 make the overland journey across the 5,000-foot glaciers of Palmer Peninsula, while the rest of the party waited at Snow Hill for rescue.
Boy, I hope I'm one of the lucky ones that gets to climb the glacier.
Do you want to climb the glacier? Or do you want to sit and wait? Do you want to climb the glacier? Or do you want to sit there and wait and wonder if the guys who climbed the glacier made it?
That's right.
And then what do you do? At what point do you go, I think we should go? No, I think we should stay. I think we should try it. No, we should stay here.
Yeah, that's just not an easy decision, no matter which way you put it. All right, well, but they have a new plan now. Right?
Yeah, that's the new plan. Okay, so they have work to do, right? While they're sitting there camping on the ice, okay, they're going to improve the boats. Okay, they spend time making the sides of the boats taller so they're more seaworthy. They cook, they hunt, they read. They spend time reading the books that they pulled off the Endurance, and they're always prepping for immediate departure that might take place at any minute. So if the ice breaks up, they want to get in the water as soon as they can before it closes again, because as soon as January 1st rolls around, it's going to start getting colder again. So, and they stopped shaving at this point because they're not on the Endurance anymore, and their faces are covered with blubber smoke. It was not a good day. On November 21st, they were able to watch from a distance. They saw the Endurance get completely consumed by the ice. The ice lifted the boat 20 feet in the air and then swallowed it down into the sea. So late November, they're still stuck. But what's interesting here, Harry, is their diary entries were all still positive.
I know a lot of military guys that have been through some relatively not easy times. You go live out in the desert for 3 weeks, or even you go do a deployment for 6 or 9 months wherever.
Yep.
Conditions are still kind of nice. Can you right? I mean, you're not being shot at when you're on the Endurance.
No,
but you have leopard seals coming after you.
Yeah, those guys are coming. So Macklin writes at one point, he says, "This sort of life has its attractions. I read somewhere that all a man needs to be happy is a full stomach and warmth, and I begin to think it is nearly true. No worries, no trains, no letters to answer, no collars to wear. But I wonder which of us would not jump at the chance to change it all tomorrow." That's what these guys are writing in their diaries.
Absolutely. Oh, I when I read that, I completely understood. Man, a hot shower and hot food But that's all I want, right? Like I'll jump at that chance. But if you just give me food and a nice place to sleep, I, I'll deal with the rest of it as it comes.
And I think, and I don't know if I guess that's that's all in perception, right? We can complain that the internet's too slow, or that I'm out of sea salt for my margarita or whatever. We can complain that, but it's but that's not helping us. The attitude is really important. So they're camping there through November and December, and getting into the summer months. Shackleton doesn't like to tempt fate. At one point, he sees two of his guys were out hunting, and they were like, "Hey, there are these little ice floes. We should ride around these." So they jump onto one of these ones and start floating. They're floating around, and Shackleton sees them, and they get chastised for that. Kind of like when who's the elf in Elf?
Buddy the Elf.
Yeah, Buddy the Elf. Yeah, Buddy the Elf jumps on the ice floe to sail to New York to find his father. Okay, they're doing that stuff. Okay, and Shackleton sees that, and but he keeps even treatment. He was fair to the men, but he tried to keep them on their best behavior and their best attitude. But he was still boss to them. In the book, it mentions this, that he's always boss. There's like, sure thing, boss. We'll do, boss. And
there's no doubt that he's the one in charge. Yeah.
Right. But that means there's never any rest. There's never rest for him. And I know I got to believe that certainly in the Army, Harry, there are guys at a certain level that you're like, you can joke with them, but that there's different things happening for them. And I'm sure the guys
they just know things that are going on, and they will either tell you or not tell you whether or not they are important. And it's always something, right? And they work because they have the responsibility for all of the men beneath them.
It's all about responsibility and duty. So they're on the flow throughout November. They get the boats ready. They run out of things to do. They're going about 2 miles a day in drifting. With the whole ice pack is moving. On December 20th, right? Shackleton and others they go look to see. They're always scouting out what's happening on the ice floes and around them, and they spend about 6 hours doing recon. And they report back. They come back to the camp. And that evening, they report that we will celebrate Christmas early, and we will leave camp on the 23rd of December. The plan is to head west with 2 boats, travel very light. And he does a thing. One of the last things he does is he leaves a message in a bottle at their camp. All right. So he leaves a bottle, that if you're in a place where you might not come back and you might disappear, they were hoping somebody would find that message and say, this is what happened. So they set out to march west and then get to the edge of the ice and then sail. The pitiful little line of march straggled across the floes in pale half light, with Shackleton in the lead, prospecting for the best route. Behind him were 7 sledges pulled by the dogs, keeping a healthy distance apart to avoid fighting between 2 teams. Next came a small sledge loaded with the blubber stove, it's easy for you to say, with the blubber stove and cooking gear. It was pulled by Green and orderlies whose faces from being close to the stove each day were black with soot. And at the rear of the column, 17 men under Worsley's command dragged the 2 boats. And they left at 3 a.m. And the reason they left, because they figured the ice will be frozen, this most froziness there. Remember, it's height of summer.
Yep.
And things
still
are
slushy.
It's still slushy. It's really bad. So they start walking along. Every step they take, their foot. I don't know if you've experienced this, Harry. I did. I remember this as a little kid. The snow would fall, and then you get sunshine, and it gets a crust on the top, and it's enough for you to put your foot down. But then when you transfer all your weight to that foot goes through. And every time they took a step, their foot went down, and they got what we used to call a soaker. All right, your foot goes in there, and the water rushes into their boots. Every step was a soaker. And then their boots weigh 7 pounds each, and they're slogging through this stuff. And after several days, you can guess what happened. They're like, yeah,
this ain't working.
This ain't working. So they have to stop again. And there's no stable ice, and there's nothing we can do here. We're going to have to go back, and we're going to have to retreat. We're going to have to find a place to just hang out for the end. And they stop at a place on the last day of December 1915 at a place that they call Mark Time Camp, implying that they are just spending time there, right? And they were supposed to have gone 200 miles. They made 9 miles, Harry, in 5 days. And it was hopeless to wait for the pack to release them. Temperatures were near freezing. There was little to be cheerful about.
Well, the temperature remained just about the freezing point, so that during the day the surface of the floes became a bog. They had to trudge about through knee-deep slush, and a man would often plunge up to his waist in an unsuspected hole. And their clothes were thus continually soaked, and their only comfort was crawling into the comparatively bearable dampness of their sleeping bags each night. Can you imagine doing that?
I couldn't get my head around that. I cannot contemplate that level of just yuck. I can't even, my feet.
Have you ever slept in a puddle before?
No, I haven't.
Okay, I have slept in a puddle before. There's two thoughts that go through.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, actually, a couple of times I've slept in, mostly because I'm really bad at building the necessary tents I should be making. But it's the first thought is, oh my goodness, this is miserable. And you eventually reach a point where you say, no, I'm tired, and this is about as good as it's going to get.
But you're just cold and wet.
Cold and wet, and that's just how it goes.
And it's not like just cold. It's not like 45 degrees and wet. It's like 10 degrees and wet. And they were constantly wet and constantly cold. Now remember, they're traveling pretty. They got like 50 days of food remaining, right? So in the new year, they get 5 seals and a penguin. And then to me, the greatest story happens. This is the best one. Okay. So they're
all right.
Returning from a hunting trip, Ords-Lees, traveling on skis across the rotting surface of the ice, had just about reached camp when an evil knob-like head burst out of the water just in front of him. He turned and fled, pushing as hard as he could with his ski poles and shouting for Wild to bring his rifle. The animal, a sea leopard, sprang out of the water and came after him, bounding across the ice with the peculiar rocking horse gait of a seal on land. The beast looked like a small dinosaur with a long serpentine neck. After a half dozen leaps, the sea leopard almost caught up with Ords-Lees when it unaccountably wheeled and plunged back into the water. By then, Ords-Lees had nearly reached the opposite side of the ice floe, and he was about to cross to safe ice when the sea leopard's head exploded out of the water directly ahead of him. The animal had tracked his shadow across the ice. It made a savage lunge for him with his mouth open, revealing an enormous array of saw-like teeth. Ords-Lees' shouts for help rose to screams as he turned and raced away from the attacker. The animal leapt out of the water again in pursuit, just as Wild arrived with his rifle. The sea leopard spotted Wild and turned to attack him. Wild dropped to one knee and fired again and again at the onrushing beast. It was less than 30 feet away when it finally dropped. 2 dog teams were required to bring the carcass into camp. It measured 12 feet long and estimated its weight at 1,100 pounds.
Well, it looks like their food supplies are good now, right?
There you go. That is like, I can imagine like Chris Pratt being the guy with the rifle, and he drops to one knee, these things charge. Like that is, these guys are steely-eyed missile men is who they are. And they're holy cow. This is I didn't even know those things existed. And this is a scene out of a modern Jurassic Park movie.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's all true. That's what happened. He almost got eaten by we all 27 out of 28 of us made it. Ords-Lees got eaten by a leopard seal. Can you imagine that? I'm sorry, Mrs. Ords-Lees. Your husband got eaten by a leopard seal. It's insane. This is a predatory species of seals and resembled a leopard only in its spotted coat and its disposition. When it was butchered, balls of hair 2 and 3 inches in diameter were found in its stomach, the remains of crab-eater seals it had eaten. So what a ghastly animal. Who invented that?
Nasty beast.
A nasty beast. All right, so it chases them all over. And I'm thinking, like, if you made this movie, Harry, and if it was fiction and these guys are trudging along and one guy's come back from camp, like, okay, really you needed to add that? Really, you got to add that for drama? I mean,
sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So That's insane. So mid-January, they move to a better flow called Patience Camp. Shackleton tells them that they're going to have to shoot some of the dogs. That's what he tells them. And rumors have been circulating about the need for that for a long time. Tempers have been rising, and things are not well. They are sitting in camp. They're waiting and waiting and waiting. They sent a small team back to the other camp for some supplies. It's a 10-hour march through the slush, and then back to Patience Camp. A storm comes in, 73 miles. They travel in 4 days, and they cross the Antarctic Circle, and everybody's pretty happy with that. And they keep waiting and waiting and waiting for open water. So Shackleton at one point decides to send 18 men back to the place where they left the provisions to get the third boat. And on February 17th, they kill 69 penguins, so they have some food. They get 300 penguins on February 20th, and 600 more. It's like penguin. It's like they get almost 1,000 penguins in 1 week in February, and they are migrating. The penguins are migrating because, Harry, what's coming?
Well, winter is coming.
Winter is coming. All right, and they have a little feast on February 29th, 1916, because it was a leap day. Those of you who are curious about leap years and leap days, I'm sure there's a Bufnagle episode back in the vaults on leap years and leap days. The drift was slow, but winter was coming. They were going north, but not as fast as winter was coming to get them. In March of 1916, Paulet Island is now 91 miles away, but the drift is now straight north, and the island is to the west-northwest. So they're drifting.
Probably going to miss it.
So the question is, are we going to drift and miss it, or we're going to go? And then on March 9th, they start to feel ocean swells. So, the ocean is rocking and rolling and doing waves and things, and they can feel the ocean swells, which means there's an open ocean nearby. Like, they figure about 30 miles.
Yeah, sure. I mean, you can feel the current. At this point, they've lived on the ice for so long, they've got to understand what everything feels like. So they can probably feel the currents. They feel the the ocean swells over and over again. And now they're starting to realize, okay, well, maybe this flow is going to break up. Maybe it's going to drift west. Maybe it's going to drift north. And they're on it for the ride right now.
Yeah, they're but they need to get to open water. They can't just, the boats they are in, or the boats they want to put in the water, they are, the water now isn't really water. It's like Harry, it's a smoothie. Okay.
It is a smoothie.
They are in a gigantic smoothie with really big ice chunks. They need a super blend jet too to grind that stuff up. But, and they get hope, and then the hope is taken away. They think it's going to break up. It's not going to break up. But the swells came, and that was the thing that really fired them up, that they might be able to get through these things. And then came the swell, the physical proof that there really was something outside of this limitless prison of ice, and all the defenses they had so carefully constructed to prevent hope from entering their minds collapsed. Macklin, who had consistently struggled to remain hard-headedly pessimistic, found it impossible to hold out any longer. He let himself go on March 13th, saying, "I am absolutely obsessed with the idea of escaping. We have been over 4 months on this ice floe, a time of absolute and utter inutility to anyone. There is absolutely nothing to do but kill time as best one may. Even at home with theaters and all sorts of amusements, changes of scene and people, 4 months of idleness would be tedious. One can then imagine how much worse it is for us. One looks forward to meals, not for what one will get, but a definite break in the day. All around us, we have had day after day of the same unbroken whiteness, unrelieved by anything at all."
Oh, man, so something's going to change.
Something is going to change. And they are running out of food. They're running out of blubber for fuel. The temp is dropping. There's now 10 degrees below zero at night. And on March 22nd, they plan to shoot the remaining dogs the next day. But on March 23rd, they spot land. They see the danger islets 42 miles away. Paulet Island is some 20 miles beyond that. A day's ride in the boat across open ocean. But they are helpless to get there because the pack is impassable. Winter is coming. But the dogs are spared. And on March 26th, rations are cut again. And on the 28th, they have one seal that they catch. And then the ice cracks.
So the ice cracks. And now the decision point. is made.
The decision point is made. Okay. And they get another sea leopard. They get 1,000 pounds of meat. They find 50 fish in the gut of the sea leopard. They pull them out carefully. So they're going to eat those too. All right. They have to put down the dogs. They take all the dogs and they put them down and they are all butchered. And due to the swells and the constant and being on constant watch, they are ready to go. The floe continues to crack and to shrink. They get another sea leopard in April, and the floe that was once a mile across is now less than 200 yards wide. They need to get west, but not too far west. There are 3 islands remaining on the peninsula. There's King George Island, there's Elephant Island, and there's Clarence Island, and there are gaps between these islands. If you shoot for them and you miss, it's going to be a problem. On April 5th, they're heading toward the gap between King George Island and Elephant Island, and they spot Clarence Island, and they see lots of animal life, but then the next day they drift back to the east. The floe splits up again. They are now on a triangle of ice, 100 by 120 by 90 yards. More cracks break into the floe, and Shackleton calls for the tents to be put up, the boats to be cleared. Launch the boats, he says, on April 9th at 12:40 p.m. They put all the stuff in the boats. They load it with stores, rations, the stove, and the tents, and within an hour, the men are off the floe, in the boats, the 3 boats, rowing for open water like there is no tomorrow, and the ice is closing in around them.
And their eggs are all in the 3 baskets.
Yes, they don't have all their eggs. Yeah, it's not eggs in 1 basket; it's eggs in 3 baskets. But unless you have all the eggs, it's not going to matter.
And they're going to open sea now, right? The floe has split. They are in the boats with all of their provisions. Their life is in the boats, and all that they had is a hope for the floe to remain open, for the ice to not crash back in on itself, and for them to make it to open sea.
Yeah, so they row, and the ice is all around them, and they're fighting off these big ice floes, and I guess you could probably call them mini icebergs. But they row for a while, and when we come back next time, we will discuss the 3 boats that they are in. They are in the Dudley Docker, the Stancomb Willis, and the James Caird, and they are rowing for their lives after spending, a year and a half stranded, anxious and ready. So it's heating up, but winter is coming, and the adventure has just begun.
Yeah, I think that's probably the best way to put it. And for the listeners out there that have not read the Endurance, at this point in time, the first 150, 170 pages are all generally the same thing. Something bad happens. They go set up camp. They realize they can't do it. They try to move forward a little bit. They can't do that either. They set up another camp. They wait out the ice flow. But once they launch the boats, the story changes.
Yeah, it gets things get worse. They get worse, but they have this strange little bit of control over what they do with these boats, and it is the ride of a lifetime. And that will come. We will take that up when we return with Mr. Shackleton. In the meantime, all of you guys out there who are dry and warm, I want you to remember to seek the good, be the good, and spread the good, and enjoy the adventure of life.